Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you all for joining us this morning for a discussion of the evolution of Japan's official development assistance, ODA, to developing nations and the contributions of JICA, the Japan International Cooperation Agency, in terms of promoting free and stable societies. My name is Victor Cha. I'm the Senior Vice President for Asia here at CSIS, Korea Chair, and also Professor at Georgetown. I want to thank the Project on Prosperity and Development for hosting today's speech. Senior Vice President Dan Rundy, Noam Unger, thank you all for the work you're doing in putting together today's event. One of the most important aspects of a country's foreign policy is its commitment to development assistance. And there are arguably few countries that have been as devoted to such assistance today than Japan. In fact, this year marks the 70th anniversary of Japan's signing of the Colombo Plan, formalizing the nation's commitment to strategic engagement with developing nations through ODA. Japan's ODA has been a profound source of good, prioritizing aid to countries to promote good governance. Today, in the context of Russia's war in Ukraine, China's rise, democratic backsliding, and increasing collusion between autocratic states, ODA is increasingly seen in a larger geopolitical context and as an important way to buttress the rules-based international order for developing and emerging economies. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing more about Japan's ODA strategy from President Akihiko Tanaka. He is president of JICA, a position he's held for the last 2 years. And this is actually the second time he served as president of JICA when he was there in 2013 to 2015. So you must have done a good job because they keep calling you back to this position. Prior to his role at JICA, Dr. Tanaka was president of the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies and a professor at the University of Tokyo. I have had the personal pleasure of knowing Dr. Tanaka for almost 3 decades when we were scholars participating in conferences in Tokyo and at different universities and places in the United States about the U.S.-Japan alliance, about the Asia-Pacific. I believe he is truly one of Japan's leading intellects, and I was very happy to learn of his returning to this appointment to lead JICA at such a critical time. So Aki, it really is a pleasure to see you here again and to welcome you to CSIS. I will now turn the stage over to you for your remarks, and then Noam Unger will join you on the stage for a fireside chat after your initial remarks. So welcome to CSIS again.
Well, thank you, Victor, for a very, very kind introduction. It's my great pleasure to be back at CSIS. I'm grateful to all my friends here for giving me the opportunity to engage in candid discussions on issues such as Japan-US relations, international politics in East Asia, and development cooperation. As you may know, as Victor introduced, I have long studied East Asian international politics and theories of international relations. So engagement with CSIS specialists such as Victor has always been very rewarding to me. But for over a decade or so, as was introduced, I was engaged in JICA's activities. I have been involved in development cooperation as a practitioner. So today, as president of the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, I would like to talk about development cooperation and in the world of disruptions. The last time that I discussed issues on development cooperation here actually was February 2014 in my previous term as JICA president, more than 10 years ago. And so much has happened in the world since then. Of course, Donald Trump won the presidential election in 2016. The United States, in a way, discarded the engagement policy toward China. China and Mr. Xi Jinping has started boasting its developmental model around the world while depriving the people of Hong Kong of their freedom. North Korea continues to develop ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons. Military coups have occurred in countries like Myanmar, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger in recent years. Mr. Putin invaded Ukraine. Civil wars broke out in Ethiopia and Sudan. Hamas attacked Israel, resulting in a prolonged siege and humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Tense standoff have persisted in the South and East China Seas. Extreme weather events are becoming more frequent. And of course, we cannot forget about COVID-19. We are confronted with the world of many, many disruptions. Our human security is in danger. Obviously, these disruptions require immediate responses. Humanitarian aid should be sent as quickly as possible. Diplomatic overtures must be made promptly. Peace talks should be pursued in a timely manner. Political dialogues may be called for to ease tensions. Even military assistance is sometimes necessary, as in the case of Ukraine. These are all important measures in this world of disruptions. Yet, I think we should not overlook the importance of development cooperation. Development cooperation is sometimes criticized as being too slow. Yes, we need ambulances to respond swiftly to emergencies. But unless we have good hospitals, ambulances could not save many lives. Without sustainable development, we cannot reduce the overall dangers coming out of the current compounded crisis. In truth, disruptions are not the isolated events, in my understanding. Instead, they arise from complex interactions among and between social systems, living systems, and physical systems. Geopolitical disruptions are compounded by natural disasters, droughts, cyclones, wildfire, earthquakes, and tsunamis. The outbreak of war can upset the world economy and even cause commodity prices to spike in regions already suffering from floods and droughts. Likewise, debt crisis caused by the mismanagement of finances and economic development may lead to a political crisis. Unless we make our societies more resilient, we cannot reduce the overall danger to human security. Political solutions are essential to resolve political problems. But political solutions that are not supported by the prospect of sound and sustainable development could be very, very fragile. Emergency relief operations are always needed when natural disasters strike. Yet, emergency relief would not prevent another disaster from happening. Rather, affected societies must reconstruct in a manner that minimizes future risks. Sound development of physical and human infrastructure that can withstand natural hazards are, I believe, necessary. To protect the free and open international order, development cooperation plays a very important role. The most important task of the international community to protect the current international political order, I think, is to support Ukraine and prevent Russia from getting away with its aggression. Though military aid for Ukraine is critical, I consider development cooperation to be just as important for the country's recovery and reconstruction. Well, although Gaza's post-conflict prospects are still murky, but development cooperation could be vital for long-term stability there. Well, if development cooperation is important, what exactly should it entail? The recent increase in policy-relevant academic studies incorporating what is called randomized controlled trials, RCT, is, I think, welcome. They can examine the effectiveness of policy interventions in the field of development cooperation. Concrete evidence of successful interventions is useful. These studies have deemed some of JICA's projects to be effective. However, RCT-based evaluations cannot easily assess all types of development cooperation, including infrastructure projects and such attempts to create a system of universal health coverage. Here, I think I would like to highlight what appeared to work in my observations as practitioner from Japan's experience over the past decades. First, I think the ownership of recipient countries is critical. When our development partners have strong ownership over projects, they are more likely to end successfully. A clear example I have in mind is the Delhi Metro in India. JICA started financing its construction in the 1990s. Through a series of large-scale concessional loans and technical cooperation, the Delhi Metro has now expanded and is now one of the biggest urban transportation networks in the world. More than 5 million people benefit from the Delhi Metro every day, avoiding heavy traffic on roads and experiencing more predictable travel times. The Delhi Metro operates on time from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. and has comfortable air-conditioned cars. In my understanding, the leadership of Eratudvarapil Sridharan, management director of Delhi Metro Rail Corporation, between 1995 to 2012, was a decisive factor in the success of JICA's cooperation for the metro. Mr. Sridharan was the driving force of Indian ownership over the project and very instrumental in collaborating with Japanese engineers to adopt what he considered to be good standards of practice of Japan's metro systems. The second element of successful approach is human capacity development and empowerment. It is a prerequisite for the transformation of motivation and mindsets. A technical cooperation project that JICA launched in Kenya in the mid-2000s, which is called the Smallholder Horticulture Empowerment and Promotion, short for SHEP. And this approach, SHEP approach, shows how human capacity development and empowerment can be realized. This project focuses on transforming farmers' mindsets from that of subsistence farming to that of market-oriented farming. That is, from grow and sell to grow to sell. SHEP programs attempt to unlock farmers' motivation by helping them arrange market surveys in nearby markets and encouraging them to plan and make informed decisions about crop selection. Through targeted capacity development, the SHEP approach has increased farmers' incomes, almost doubled, and resulted in improved livelihoods, enhanced diets, and better living conditions. In collaboration with other development partners, the SHEP approach has spread now to more than 60 countries and features prominently in government policies. In fact, upon the completion of JICA's technical cooperation projects in Malawi and South Africa, the ministries of agriculture of both countries adopted SHEP as their own program. The third element of effective development cooperation is, I think, long-term commitment. JICA's development cooperation in promoting peace building in the Mindanao region of the Philippines underscores this. In Mindanao, military conflicts between Muslim residents and the Filipino government occurred over several decades, threatening lives and the well-being of communities. Japan began its cooperation in Mindanao during the 1990s, based on the idea that prospects of development can contribute to peace building and peace consolidation. Japan engaged with both the Philippine governments and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, MILF, for realization of a peace process. In addition to undertaking peace mediation and ceasefire monitoring, Japan has also provided development cooperation aimed at strengthening capacity of the Bangsamoro Transitional Authority, which is created based on the MILFs, to deliver services, including for community development, agriculture, and basic infrastructure. Our support has gone a long way to improving the livelihoods of residents of the Mindanao region. JICA's close and continued involvement in the peace process, even during times of crisis, earned the strong trust of both the government and the MILF. Through this cooperation, all sides made efforts to improve the prospects for a lasting peace, ultimately leading to the realization of the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro in 2014. To further solidify the prospects of a lasting peace, JICA has supported delivering what we call quick impact projects as peace dividends, including the construction of schools and other community facilities. We will continue to support the transition and preparation for the official establishment of the Bangsamoro autonomous governments in June 2025. Obviously, there may be many other elements of success for the effective development cooperation. Still, the three I have listed here should be included in any conditions of effective development cooperation. Ownership of the people and leaders of developing countries is crucial. If assistance is viewed merely as a gift, once the assistance ends, so too does its effect. The fruits of development cooperations are sustainable only if the measures that are introduced via development cooperation are internalized within the recipient country. Unless you consider the project as your own, you may not maintain and promote it with your own resources. In this sense, development cooperation serves as a catalyst for those who want change. Capacity development and empowerment is equally indispensable. To clarify, though, the transfer of knowledge and techniques may not be effective unless it helps to unlock the right motivation and mindsets of recipients. To realize such transformation, people-to-people relations, people-to-people interactions are very important. Intense dialogue and serious attempts at building mutual understanding will be a trigger to make such transformation of mindsets. Unless people are motivated, any external help or suggestions will not bring about much change. Long-term commitment is also pivotal in a turbulent world. Many fluctuations, often bad ones, transpire over the course of development, including peace building. Unless there is a consistent approach over the long term, durable expectations of peace will not take root. Unless such expectation does not take root, any political resolution to conflict could be very fragile. Well, having said all this, I do not intend to imply that JICA's development cooperation is perfect. In our annual evaluation of projects, some projects are rated as category C on the scale from A to D. Given the serious challenges that can unfold in a world marked by disruptions, it is not so easy to implement development cooperation effectively. We have experienced many disappointments, but there are also promising examples from our extensive body of work, as I illustrated today. You might be wondering, even if some of JICA's work is helpful, can Japan continue to deliver for the international community? Japan's GDP fell to the 4th place in the world last year, just after that of Germany. Some might view that Japan's prolonged economic stagnation since the 1990s as lost decades. Then again, if you look at what it has done internationally in recent years, despite such relative economic decline, Japan has made many positive international contributions in many areas. For example, after the United States withdrew from the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, Japan took the initiative to preserve this pact within the framework called the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP. The United Kingdom is now joining the CPTPP. Moreover, Japan coined the concept of a free and open Indo-Pacific. Nowadays, many countries and organizations drafted their Indo-Pacific strategies. It is true that Japan is no longer the biggest provider of official development assistance, as was in the case of the 1990s. Last year, however, Japanese ODA on a grant equivalent basis reached a historic high, even higher than when Japan was the world's top donor. ODA as a percentage of GNI also hit a highest mark in 2023 at 0.44%. The GNI ratio of Japan's ODA is still lower than the international target of 0.7%. However, it does surpass the OECD average. Furthermore, looked from the perspective of recipient countries, Japan remains the largest provider of ODA to most Southeast Asian countries, India, Bangladesh, Mongolia, Uzbekistan, and Panama. Though Japan is not the top provider of ODA in sub-Saharan Africa or the Pacific Islands, it ranks as the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th largest donors in a number of countries from these regions. In absolute terms, Japan's ODA has increased, even if it has not quite held up against the level of the ODA from the US and Germany, both of which had increased its ODA quite big in the first 2 decades of 21st century. Before elaborating on Japan's support for Ukraine, I would like to first express my appreciation for the valuable advice that CSIS scholars have kindly shared with JICA's Ukraine team. Ukraine is currently a very important partner for JICA. Japan's total non-military contribution to the country amounts to about $9 billion, behind only that of Germany and the UK. JICA, in close consultation with relevant Ukrainian ministries and municipalities, is providing mine detectors, demining machines, heavy machines for debris management, generators, equipment for power substations, MRIs and CTs for hospitals, PCs for schools, and many other kinds of equipment. These are all items that our Ukrainian partners have prioritized in their pressing needs. JICA will continue to respect Ukraine's ownership. ODA as qualitative inputs, as quantitative inputs to the developing countries continues to be important. Even so, I would argue that we should pay much closer attention to the outcome of our development cooperation. I have pointed out a few JICA projects that have had positive outcomes. They rested on securing the ownership of recipients, unlocking the full potential and motivation of human resources, and maintaining long-term consistency. Though Japan's financial resources may come under further strains in the future, I think together with our global partners like the United States, we will do our best to foster resilient, sustainable development in the world of disruptions. Thank you very much.
Dr. Tanaka, thank you so much for sharing those insights with all of us. I think given your experience, you are you have a particular set of experiences that lend themselves to a reflection on what makes for good, effective development cooperation. And so we really appreciate having you here at CSIS to discuss these important issues. Good morning, everyone. My name is Noam Unger. I am a senior fellow with the Project on Prosperity and Development, and I'm also director of the Sustainable Development and Resilience Initiative, which is actually probably still the newest program at CSIS. And it's part of an emerging suite of programs that we have really centered around the concept of human security, which Japan for years has been a promoter of the concept of human security in many ways. So congratulations on your institution and to Japan for 70 years of providing ODA to developing countries. As you shared quite eloquently, you don't do something for 70 years without actually learning some lessons from doing that. And I think you shared with all of us some of those lessons for effective development cooperation, particularly highlighting ownership, human capacity development and empowerment, and long-term commitment, which I agree are really three core elements of providing effective development assistance. I'm interested, President Tanaka, when you look to the future and you think about the prospect of marking 80 years and 90 years of Japanese ODA, so the next 10 and 20 years out, what are some of the exciting opportunities that can potentially accelerate global development progress? And what are some of the rising threats to that progress? And how is JICA shifting to either take advantage of those opportunities or address those threats?
Well, thank you very much. Yes, there are great opportunities in the coming years. And one of them is the role of the private sector. The ODA is normally regarded as governmental activities. But recently, I found the increasing interest among the private sector to contribute to the betterment of society and improving the conditions in developing world as well as in the advanced industrial societies. I think many private sector is paying attention to solutions to climate change, and also they increase their investment that will contribute to the enhancement of education and health and other sectors. And also, I found some really dynamic activities of many startups in utilizing recent technology to resolve issues critical for development, sustainable development. And, but there are also risks, and that risks, well, one sort of risks that has continued to exist for a long time, and the risks that we are now seeing in front of us. One continuing risk is the continuing lack and limited basic infrastructure in many developing countries. For example, there are countries that still have all people have access to electricity. And even if startups they try to utilize all the recent technologies, unless the electricity is not available, it's very hard to contribute. And then recently, I think, the more and more challenging are what I have described as compounded nature of the recent crisis. The intensification of climate change, extreme weathers, combined with other social elements, and that could increase more risks. And then under that kind of circumstances, how to make collaboration between organizations like us with the private sector can be a very, very challenging. But I think in the World Development Corporation, we need persistence.
The long-term commitment.
Yeah.
There's a lot that the United States can learn from Japan on the issue of Pacific Island states, and it's a major area of attention given geostrategic competition concerns. What are some of the opportunities and challenges for Pacific Island states? How is JICA partnering with them, with other countries to assist them, and with the United States?
Well, as you know, the Pacific Islands states face many, many challenges, even though some of them have a fairly high living standard. But some of them are very small and a country with the average altitude less than 10 meters. And then other than Papua New Guinea and Fiji, many of them are very, very small countries with a population, well, 10,000 and some 100,000. And some countries like Niue has population less than 2,000. And then they are isolated. And so their development challenges, well, they are facing with the serious danger from the climate change. If the sea level goes up, they really face existential threat. And because of this small nature and isolated nature, provision of healthcare is a real challenge. And and then also another thing that JICA has found out is that, because the small areas, that again, waste management is also a very, very challenging task. And traditionally, Australia, New Zealand, the United States, and Japan have contributed a provision of official development assistance. In many southern Pacific Islands nations, Australia is the biggest donor. Japan is the second or third. And the northern Pacific Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, Marshall Islands, and Palau, the United States is a compact nation, providing the largest amount of assistance. And so we, United States, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, have been collaborating with its assistance to the Pacific Islands nations. But given the real a challenge. It's really a challenge to provide sufficient healthcare system to these countries. We need to really hard work. And then one of the difficulties of small island states is its limited administrative capacity. Because of the small population size, the government is also very small. And even if all outsider providers try to point to money, unless they can manage them properly, those monies will be wasted. And so I think coordination among the countries in question quite important.
I think it's interesting to think about coordination in that context with small island states. I'm reminded that Prime Minister Mia Mottley of Barbados talks about if something's not insurable, it's not investable. And you were talking about both the private sector and the increased climate risks. And maybe there's a way that like-minded donor countries could actually help to sort of reduce some of the risks while inviting greater private sector into this foundational level of support that could increase investment. But to your point, capacity is a big issue.
Yeah. Well, some of the Pacific Island nations are in a good position to receive many tourists because their sceneries are very beautiful. And so assisting these countries to develop their own tourist industries can be one area that the private sector can play a role too.
You also talked about Ukraine quite a bit in your talks, in your remarks, and it continues to be obviously a major focus. You talked about some of the areas that JICA is currently helping the government of Ukraine on right now. But as you look forward in terms of economic recovery efforts, what is necessary either from Japan or from other partners really in the Ukraine context?
Well, first of all, we really want Russia to end the war. But even during the war time, there are areas where we can extend our cooperation to Ukraine. And as I said in my presentation, many of the things that JICA is now providing are made in response to the prioritized requests from the Ukrainian governments. And then, generators and mine detectors, and these are essential things to have safe life. One area that we have received comments and remarks from our colleagues in Ukraine is the prospect of private sector investment in Ukraine. And last February, Japan organized a Japan-Ukraine conference of cooperation, which quite a number of Japanese private sector companies participated in showing their interest in making investment in Ukraine. Some of them are now entering Ukraine, and JICA has an office in Kyiv, more than 1 year. But recently, JETRO opened its office in Kyiv, so that this JETRO can encourage Japanese business to find more opportunities. The ideal thing is, of course, the early coming of peace, and then after that, the Ukraine may be included into larger European economy and then develop as a competitive market. And then, well, in that sense, I think it's in the interest of Japanese business to be there early enough.
Mm-hmm. Well, you certainly have like-minded colleagues here at CSIS and thinking about the ways that economic support and recovery and private sector investments in Ukraine can even help even during wartime as well as with recovery. A week from today, we're having the second of our sort of big doing business in Ukraine conferences here at CSIS. And it's been in past, JICA has been such a strong partner with CSIS on these issues. So thank you for your leadership on those issues especially. I also want to ask a couple other questions, and then I'm going to open it up to audience Q&A, so I'd like people to think about their questions. But Japan has long adhered to the principle that a strong rule of law is imperative for sustainable economic development. And you were talking about in your discussion how you were talking about developing cooperation in a world of disruptions. And one of those trends that's happening is really a retrenchment or backsliding with regard to democracy and rule of law as well. So could you describe a little bit about what Japan is doing to curb corruption, promote transparency and democracy?
Well, this is a very, very important issue. In order to minimize corruption and maximize transparency in our activities of cooperation with our development partners, we need to stick to the basics, which I think many other development organizations have been doing that. And World Bank is doing that. Asian development banks are doing that. That is to make and draft and agree strict loan agreements and grant agreements that require partner countries to avoid corruptions, to make it as transparent as possible, to make considerations of the adverse effect on the environment and society. And these are generally included in our grant agreements and loan agreements. And then we urge our partner countries to adhere to those agreements in preparation of the projects and the implementing stage of that. And in addition, Japan has worked very hard to improve the legal systems of partner countries. The major targets that Japan did was included Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. So we have long sent legal experts to these countries to draft their own civil codes, draft their own business-related regulations. And those are the efforts to transform their legal system so that these activities are conducted in a legal manner. But then if, I said then your natural responses should be that, but look at what they're doing in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. They may not be respecting the rule of law so much. And here I think we have really big challenges. Again, this is the matter of how we consider the nature of partner countries' governments. If the government and certain authoritarian leaders don't like independent judiciaries, it's very hard for outsiders to change their minds. And so I think some of recent developments in Cambodia and Vietnam. Laos, to me, rather disappointing. But again, I don't believe we should give up our attempts to send our experts to improve their legal systems. It is our hope that in the long run, once the political system undergoes changes, then we may be able to see new generations of lawyers who could make their country more transparent and having independent judiciaries. Mm-hmm. But I'm not arguing that we have been successful on that front.
Well, it's tricky, and it relates a little bit to the principle that you were talking about of ownership as well. In your most recent answer, you were talking about the sort of balance of loans and grants. And earlier in your remarks, when you were talking about ownership, you also talked about JICA's assistance not being seen as merely a gift, that it's actually there are sort of vested stakes. And I want to get into that for my last question before I turn it to the audience, which is because a colleague of mine, Dan Rundy, who was mentioned earlier by Victor, recently came out with a bit of a thought piece and proposal around the U.S. involvement in concessional loans, because most of the balance of U.S. assistance is provided in the form of grants. As you know, years ago, there was a big move actually away from lending in light of a previous debt crisis for fear of making it worse and moving towards grants. Japan's assistance is very much in the form of concessional loans. I think it's on the order of like 86% or something comes under that brand of assistance. And I'm interested in what you think about sort of the balance of how different donors approach these issues and what's needed now given the debt crisis that is really roiling the global south.
Well, first of all, there are necessities of grant aid. Those countries who have very fragile financial conditions, our cooperation, it cannot be loans. Extending loans to those countries who are already indebted will exacerbate the conditions. And to those countries, we need to consider grant assistance. But again, here too, we need to, encourage our recipient countries to develop their ownership of the grant assistance. And then in order to do that, we need to make capacity development of the recipient countries' administrations. And so these are, areas where grant aids still continue to be very important. But those countries who have maintained a fairly wise fiscal policy, maintaining financial conditions, concessional loans could be very, very effective. First of all, the loans you have to repay. And unless you consider this your own program, you may not be able to repay it. And the requirement repayment really encourages them to consider the type of projects very, very, their own. I think, I mentioned about Delhi Metro. And Delhi Metro's case, Japan's concessional loans, I think, covers about 50% of the cost. And the Indian government provided 50%. And so 50-50. And under the strong leadership of the executive director of Metro Corporation, the Indian government considers it is a very important project. And so loans encourages ownership. And sometimes also loans, we oftentimes co-finance loans together with World Bank or other development banks. And then sometimes this is, the loans is provided to the recipient country's budget. But in that case, we often require the recipient countries to meet certain policy requirements, certain conditions of improving their institutions. And so the loans could give incentive for the recipient countries to improve their institutions. And then also, what's good about loans is that based on the repaid fund, we could extend further loans. And then, of course, there are risks of loans. Sometimes some countries may be defaulted. And in that case, we need to restructure the debt. But then I think with wise advice to the recipient countries, debt restructuring can have a positive impact on the future development. So I think there are areas that we can consider the usability of loans. But particularly, as you know, there are increasing number of countries that are becoming, they are transforming from the poor, low-income countries to lower middle-income countries and upper middle-income countries. If they become upper middle-income countries, I think there is a high likelihood that their government can utilize the loan programs more effectively. And well, as you mentioned, that JICA's portfolio of concessional loans is very high. Currently, not as high as 80%, but about 50 to 55%. But still, JICA's balance sheet is quite healthy, and that means that concessional loans are helpful for the developing countries so that they can repay them back to us, which somehow makes our balance sheet quite sound.
Great, and I think there's lots more to unpack there probably in terms of, because arguably it matters who's holding the loans and how much they are pushing for certain responsibilities on the part of the governments and the companies and others with whom they're investing. But let me open it up and see if there are questions. I see one in the back and I see one in the front, and we'll take those two. This gentleman back here, yes.
Yes, all right. I know I'm Rafael Romeo. I co-authored the paper that Noam referred to with Dan Rundy about lending. I think JICA is a very important example in this space, and I want to ask you something that you just glossed over, but I think is super important. When these countries go into default, have you seen JICA have a place at the restructuring discussions, a place around the creditor committees that would do exactly what you just said, which is use the restructuring as a clean start for the country to get very much a path towards growth, rather than, I think Noam was hinting at, depends who's holding the loan. If your creditor committee is chaired by France and the PRC, as is the case in, for example, Zambia, it is highly unlikely that perhaps some of the agency problems that you have will result in a clean start for the country fully. So I'll leave it there. But that's a very interesting insight that you had.
And actually, can I ask, let's take this other question as well so that we can group them. It was, yes, this lady right here. Oh, please wait for the microphone. It's coming around. There you go.
Well, first, thank you for an extraordinarily insightful presentation. My name is Mindy Reiser, and I'm Vice President of Global Peace Services, USA. So I was very interested in your linkage with development and peace. I've also worked on projects in Central Asia, and you mentioned Uzbekistan, which I was very pleased to hear. What's my question? In terms of the future, technology plays a vital role, and Japan is well known for its insights and its innovations in technology. Technology does not only apply to the highest level of IT, but the future of work in terms of agricultural labor, that can be replaced by robotics. In terms of work in manufacturing, that can be replaced. So what happens to training of workers? They're going to urban areas. What's their future, and how can Japan help?
Great, thank you so much. Both very good questions. I'll turn back to you, and then we'll see if we have time for a couple more. So the first one was really about the makeup of the creditor committees, and does JICA have a seat at the table for restructuring conversations? And the second one, clearly around tech and the future of work and training of workers.
Well, thank you very much. I think it is a very important subject. I understand that the debt restructuring exercise is a really opportunity to extend good advice to the recipient countries. The most recent example that we have experienced is the case of Sri Lanka, which defaulted 2 years ago. And JICA has a fair amount of the credits there, but smaller than China's. And the committee was actually participated by our colleagues in Ministry of Finance. And so Japan, represented by Ministry of Finance, co-chaired the committee to restructure Sri Lankan's debt. And it took some time until Sri Lankan government acquired agreements from China, which the committee members can somehow accept. That's essentially rescheduling. China rarely provides complete debt relief. But somehow in Sri Lanka's case, we all agreed to have a debt restructuring by rescheduling. And so finally, we were able to make complete memorandum of understanding with Sri Lankan government so that JICA started disbursing the loans in the middle of July. And I think in some sense having a loan has given us the opportunity to have certain influence over the future course of the Sri Lankan government. And I think I'm not sure what's going to be happen in the Sri Lankan election, but as far as the current government of Sri Lanka goes, that the Sri Lankan government considers Japan to be quite persistent in its effort to support the government's economy in the worst of the time.
And then there was this other question.
Yeah.
Thank you for that answer. There's another question on tech and the future of work and training.
Right.
And I think this will have to be our last question, and then we'll wrap up.
Well, JICA has considered workforce training always very, very important. And then in line with the partner countries' necessities, we establish certain countries' vocational training centers. I think we have a quite strong vocational centers in Senegal and Uganda and many other countries. As the sort of types and level of technology required changes, we need to add some more the instruments of training people. And the one type of activities, one type of training instrument is what we call the, I don't know the official English name, but what we call, in Japan, what we call the higher specialized schools, which starts at the 13th grade to 2 years beyond high school, and where the students are trained in science and technologies. And so they get the degree of a higher specialized school at the age of 20, but then in Japan's case, after completion of that program, they can enter regular universities on the third-year students. And then this, I think, has been a very useful instrument to train the young students in technology and science areas. And so now some of our partner countries have shown interest in introducing similar systems. Like Mongolia have already established this similar system. And this is early training from the age 16 to 20, and then if they are hopeful, they would enter science and engineering departments of the universities and the graduate school. And then some of them, at the age of 20, they can start working. And then another country that has shown this system is Thailand. And so we are providing certain examples so that the areas of training may be, that we and Japanese system able to cooperate. We would, of course, depending on the wishes of our recipient countries, but if they consider these to be useful, we are very happy to work with them.
Well, thank you, Tanaka-san, and please join me in thanking President Tanaka for sharing these approaches of Japan's International Cooperation Agency and these lessons and this sort of vision of how to approach these challenging times and issues going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.